shortlisting for the grand finale of SaaS 2024. Today we have Miss Aparna Jiddu with us. She is a seasoned professional with extensive experience in cloud technologies, specializing in Microsoft Azure. In today's session, Aparna ma'am will walk you through the fundamentals of cloud management on Azure, share best practices, and provide actionable tips to optimize your solution for the grand finale. Thank you, ma'am, for joining the session. And before we start the session, I request all of the participants to please be muted throughout the session. Uh, uh, we will do a Q&A session at the end after the session will be completed. Okay. Apna ma'am, over to you now.
Thanks a lot. Hope I'm audible. What we'll do is we'll spread this session in two parts. I'll take you through some slides specifically on the Microsoft Azure. And then later we can put it open for the Q&A. Like we'll see how your application, maybe I believe you will have questions around how you can move your applications onto the cloud. So that kind of things. So as already introduced, I'm part of Tata Consultancy Services and be with TCS for past 21 years. I'm working on in the AI.cloud unit where we work across multiple clouds, and specifically I focus on Azure Cloud and Azure AI technologies. Okay, so with this, let me quickly bring my screen up and share. Can someone please confirm if my screen is visible?
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible.
Yes. Right. Okay. So some fundamentals we'll cover. I hope some of you might be knowing this, but still for the benefit of the people who are never into the cloud, we'll quickly cover those on what is the overview of the Azure. Basically SaaS, PaaS and IaaS, and PaaS is where mostly people work on, or we also as an applications when we give to the companies, we work mostly on the PaaS. So we'll talk about that in detail on the PaaS services and the web applications, which are very commonly used. Then the web app architecture with Azure, how you will do, and benefits of Azure adoption. And specifically, let's talk on Azure AI also, because of late this is making good amount of trends. See, on in high level, very common topics or the important ones is what I picked up. Let's see if something more is required from this. So Microsoft Azure, if you say like introduction to cloud computing, if you say cloud computing, if you actually take it, it is generally any of the cloud, if you take it as three parts: the storage part, the compute and the network. That's how we high level break any of the cloud. So if you go to the compute, something like your PaaS service or your web application, how do you host it? The compute power that is required to run the application, that is one part. Second, network, how do I connect my front end with my back end or with the other services? That's the part. Or how do you set up your network where your group of employees work together or your application will be in that particular, all that is on the network part. The third, the important part is the storage. Be it your blob storages or your databases, how do you persist your data? So that's how the cloud computing is. So then what's that? We do the same thing on-prem, then why do we bring the cloud? That's the next question that comes in, right? That is mainly to bring in the scalability, then the flexibility. So today, in my application, there are 1,000 people that they're using. Tomorrow, there could be a high probability that there will be 10,000, but the day after tomorrow, again, it will be 1,000 only. So I don't want to pay for 10,000 or design for 10,000 upfront. My application should work, but not my infra be compatible for 10,000 right from the beginning, but it should be able to scalable on need basis to that and scale down. So that way it will help me in saving my cost. And of course, on the scalability and flexibility, if there is a sudden rush on my application, how do I handle that? That's the main part of it. Then let's not talk too much on the history. It is mainly, it started around 2010s, and also how they do is they create multiple data centers, like how it was there previously on-prem. So you might be having data center within your enterprise. So here now you're having a group of locations together. There are data centers, and wherever there's a proximity or the probability of use, these data centers are replicated. So you have multiple data centers across the world. So whatever you access, generally you try to access to a data center which is near to your location. That's how this works. And they keep evolving also. So Azure, similarly, AWS and Google also, everybody will have their own data center, and they keep evolving by bringing more and more data centers where they host it. So service, any application or any kind of interface that a cloud gives you, it's called a service. That's what they offer. So we call it as cloud services. Be it compute, we spoke about compute, storage, and networking, right? Analytics, or be it AI. So anything they offer, it's called as an service, so that you can keep using them. So that's how. And Azure, it spans over 60 regions and provides services in over 140 plus countries. That's how they operate it. So this is a public cloud services. So cloud service not restricted to an enterprise, but definitely they maintain the security that is required for your application. So you can pick up a resource group under which your application will be there, and which need not be shared to anybody else. So that kind of role-based access, so on and so forth, also can be set. So SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, let's quickly talk about this because we are referring to this point. This is software as a service. So this is, in this one, I package my entire application. The end user will have an option only to access this application. So something like, very common example is a Gmail that we use, or Microsoft 365 of ecosystem, where we go ahead and use these applications. Here we don't develop anything. The application is already developed or configured, and you access it. Maximum, more or less, they might give you an option to configure it to set to a particular environment, but it is very much restricted. So it's all packaged together. This is called as software as a service. The second, platform as a service, is very commonly used. In this model, the provider hosts the required platform, the tools that are required to host an application. Suppose if you take a web application, I need it, maybe it is in React and Python together. So what kind of platform that is required to host that application? The platform is what that is given. But what do you do as a developer? You go and host your application over there. The server is also web server, everything is available over there. So you host it and use it. That is the platform as a service. Here also, we are not actually bringing the platform, we are not setting up. The platform is already available, be it Python or React. The node required for that is, everything is set up. So that's the third part, is ground up. I don't want anybody to set. I want to set up the machine myself, and I want to bring the software that is required for my needs. So that's why we call it as infrastructure as a service. So infrastructure, we are entirely lending it. So here you can take a VM. On that, you can install the required software that you want, the web server that you want. You can set up the network, the firewall that is required, so that the end users can access the storage, everything. There's a full control. That is the infrastructure as a service model. So these are the three very common models, or the high level categorization. So then why do we talk about all these three models? That depends on the enterprise or your application need. In some cases, I need a complete control of the system, or there is a particular software which doesn't, which the cloud provider is not able to give it to me. So in that case, I need an IaaS. Or in my case, it's a very common kind of interface that I use. It's a Node.js application, React with a Node.js. It's very common. So then for me, PaaS and good. Number three, if it's a SaaS, if it's a Microsoft 365, Office 365 application that I want, if that's already pre-packaged and given, I can use it. So that depends on the application that you use, the enterprise needs, the security needs, the configuration, level of configuration. Based on that, you can pick up the model that you want. So then the next comes, the very commonly used is what we thought we'll be talking. So PaaS services and web applications. Let's talk about this. So this is a platform for developers. PaaS services provide a platform for developers to build, test, and deploy applications. So without, you need not actually create the physical infrastructure. That doesn't mean there is no infrastructure that is not existing. There is an infrastructure, but that is pre-created. Number two, the framework is also set up. So whatever framework, when I'm developing, I need a particular web application server, I need a particular version of Python or the React, all that are pre-created. You need to select whichever you need to create. That's the platform. And what is the advantage? It helps in reducing the time and cost, and setting up and maintaining this physical infrastructure. All that will be reduced. And from the Azure, what kind of ways, or how do you deploy this kind of web application? Let's talk about that. The first and fundamental, or the most important one, is the Azure App Service. Azure Application Service, that's what it's called as App Service. It's a fully managed platform for building, deploying, and scaling the web applications. And mobile backends also, you can have it on this app service. So it has integration with other Azure services. You can integrate, be it your databases or any other things that you need, notification services. Suppose if you are building a mobile backend thing, you might be needing a good amount of notification services. You can build with that. The monitoring services, all these you can have. So every app service underlying, it will have an app service plan, which to which level you want to cater. So that could be simple free category to a paid category. The free is maybe in a day for an hour you can use. At an experimentation level, as a student, suppose free category would be enough for you. But something like a productionized system that you want to give it an enterprise, premium tier would be good, because that way you will have a backup also. If there's something down, there's something more that immediately takes it up, and you can scale it also. So there's a good amount of recovery services that are attached to it. So premium plans will be there. So you have variety of plans. So please look into Azure documentation whenever you're picking up a service. Depending on the need, the number of people that are going to use your application, the loads, that peak loads that you want to handle, you might need to pick up the tier of it. That is called picking up the tier or the scaling up and down of it. Then the second is the Azure Functions. It's a serverless computing platform. Serverless doesn't mean that totally there's no server, nowhere it is in. Like, it's all completely managed by the cloud. That's where it is. And the most important part is it's an event-driven function. Suppose if a particular event occurs, then I need to do certain amount of functionality. That's the event-driven. Example, let's take the Azure Blob Storage. Suppose if I upload one particular file, you need to read through that file and do certain amount of processing. So what is the event? I'm uploading the file. So as soon as I upload the link, I don't want to manually go and do and trigger and something. So it should, but that the event here is the upload of the file. It has to detect that and do it. So Azure Functions offers that kind of event-driven functionality. There are multiple ways in which you can pick up these events. So whatever is the one that I gave an example. Beyond that, you can have multiple ways on it. On top of it also, it offers an API interface as well. So if you have any application, you want to integrate an API, you can create APIs using Azure Functions. So it is very convenient and commonly used functionality. Both these from the web end, app service, and the Azure Functions will actually suffice a lot of your needs. So how do you deploy? So whenever you develop your application, web application, you locally, obviously, you'll compile it. So then how do you deploy it? So you can pick up an Azure app service within your Azure cloud. You can go and create an app service, and there'll be an options in which you can deploy. This deployment options, it could be either through Git, or you can actually package your entire application and do an FTP to that. And with Azure DevOps, and there are some other options as well. Once you go into your Azure App Service interface, you'll be able to see all these ways in which you can upload it. So that's the advantage of using app service, because it's a managed environment. They give all this flexibility. And of course, if you need to troubleshoot, there are two options. There are logger diagnostics, Azure monitors, all this you can see. Apart from that, you can actually browse through also the folder structure of how it was created. So you can go double click through and all this information within your app service, that whatever is required at a developer level today, if that particular server is on my local thing, how do you do? Similar in the cloud also, you can do a similar kind of thing. So whenever you're deploying the application, the first and fundamental thing is determine which kind of technology that you want your application to host on. That is the first thing when you're creating the app service. So be it a web application, number one. Number two, do you want a Windows or Linux framework? Number three, whether you want a Node or a Python or some other .NET kind of things. So there are multiple options over there. The version that you need, select that. Once you're done, have a good amount of monitoring that is set up, so that to troubleshoot your application in case of it. And the fundamental thing is, how do you upload your compiled code back onto the Azure App Service, compiled or non-compiled code, depending on the technology that you pick up. So that is whether you have a Git, local Git, or whether you want to do an FTP, all that you need to set it up and do. And of course, the tier part, how do you want to scale it? Whether you want to take a premium tier upfront, or you can take a basic tier. On need basis, you can scale it up, be it horizontally or vertically on need basis. And of course, all before this, you need to figure out whether it's an web application that you need or something else. If you just need an API, function apps will serve a good purpose. And with the web application, you can even deploy APIs as well. So that advantage also you will have. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So web app architecture with Azure. So before this, I just want to quickly come back to the interface and check if there is any question. No, there's no question here. If there's any question, you can put it in the chat window. I'll periodically come back and check here. Okay. Any web application that you take, so it's a tired architecture is what let's discuss today. I'm not making it complex and going into a different type of architecture. Let's take the tired architecture, the front end, the back end, and the database. Of course, there'll be a middleware also in most of the cases, or the middle part of it. The front end application is your user interface elements, specifically the forms that you're going to show on your, then the buttons, menus, the action for a particular button. So these kind of your, this is your front end part of it. How do you interact with your application? The second part is the code behind, or the middle part, which I not list here, but basically when you do the action part of it, when I click on a button, so what is the action that I need to do? That comes onto the my code behind part of the middle type part. This generally you can commit with your front end or the back end, depending on how do you classify it. And the last one is the backend components, the server side logic. So, okay, I've done some action on the front end. I filled a form today. Maybe I want to register to a particular session. So I give all the details. Then I do a submit thing. So what action it has to, it might need to do certain actions like validating whether I filled all the information. Is it the right thing? Or there could be somewhere like the date should be in this particular format, or so on and so forth. Or it has to invoke some other things. So all these kind of validations is what that needs to do. And number three, where do you insert it? You need to persist the data somewhere, right? Is it in the database, or am I going to put it in the blob? So all that kind of logic is going to form your backend components. So they're handling mainly the data processing and the business logic. That's your backend. So whenever you design the application, ensure that you categorize into front end and backend. It is good to deploy everything into a singing application, but if you it's even more better if you're able to classify and categorize into two applications, two services. One web app is for your front end, one for your back end, or you have an API management kind of thing. So this kind of loose coupling, how it will help you is, tomorrow if you want to make a change in the back end alone, I need not touch the entire code, I need not deploy the front end also together. So because this will bring in a lot of regression aspects. So to restrict or the minimize the, what you can very well do is just try to classify is, do a loose coupling of it, and appropriately deploy in the required applications. Then third part or the final part is the database part. So the data that you're going, suppose today I'm building a library website. So I want to persist the books that are there, or who have hired the books. This you have to persist somewhere, right? That's where you can have your database. So you have your front end, back end, then your database, then you might have a middle tier as well if required. That's one thing. And number two, try to segregate your applications or make it loosely coupled. Please separate it front end, back end separate. And number three, please try to deploy it separately also, so that you can individually play around with it. Or not the depend. So together also, nobody is going to stop you. You can definitely go and do it for an experimental kind of application. It's very well. But in an enterprise level, they always try to segregate so that individually you can scale it. My front end, I don't need a premium tier, or my back end, I would be needing only a basic tier. So that way, if I segregate, I can accordingly pick up. So that's the advantage of segregating it. So let's quickly see this, or this is very common resource that we refer. Let me open this. See, architecture, this Microsoft has a very good learning interface. It's called learn.microsoft.com. In that, you have something for an architecture center. Within the architecture center, if you see, this is a quick tour of style. There'll be multiple web architectures or architectures that are relevant to different things like a compute, data, event driven. You could see here, right? Microservices, entire application, web queue, so on and so forth. Design principles, and they give a lot of examples on how we can implement. So in this, if you see the web application, this is a web application we just spoke about. So you have a web tier, you could have a middle tier also, and then the data tier. This is web application firewall. So who all can access, I can set the rules on from where my request can come in, and also you can have a firewall. Then comes your web tier. And middle tier, you can directly access on need base, or if there is a messaging kind of interface that you want to develop, you can have a messaging kind of thing. And you can have a caching. because sometimes I can just pick up my data from the cache and need not go to the data directly. So that is also, see, all these are not mandatory attributes of a web application. These are very much possible or in bigger interface, but in that, depending on your need, you might just need a web tier and a data tier alone, or a web and middle and a data, web messaging. There could be multiple combinations. So depending on your application needs and interface, you can decide on what you can have it. So I would suggest, please, all of you go through these architecture styles which are suitable. There's a good amount of diversity. This is a web queue worker. This is a microservice thing. So where you have API management as a gateway, and each one is segregated as a service. Separately, you can deploy each of the microservice, and there's a management and orchestration. And so that depends on how you do your application, your needs. Please look into this to suit to your problem statement, which one is suitable for you. So I'll put this in the chat window as well. I'm sorry. So that you can refer to the at a later point. Suppose if I create a microservice with server architecture, suppose I have two endpoint, which is the most efficient way in which we can share data between these two services. Of those two functions should be completely, or those two functions should be completely isolated. This completely depends. Generally, idea is to have them isolated only and have it through the interface or through the gateway to communicate. That's the idea. But that again depends on your internal architecture and how it is required. They could be right, and what I will say is like a grouped architecture. A function might be dependent on function. You don't want to go through the gateway to avoid or reduce the latency. So that depends on your need. There is no hard and fast rule that you have to go in. The more the isolated or the better you go through the gateway, that's always recommended. But recommended or not always hard and fast rules. That depends on the requirement. So I would suggest you go through the requirements, the architecture styles to see which one suits to your exact need. That's how we do it based on the actual requirement. There could be certain laid down guidelines, but the guidelines need not be 100% followed. That again can be customized according to the requirements that you have. Okay. Now let's go back. We spoke about the architecture styles. Azure App Service, Azure Function Apps also. Azure Function Apps is another interesting one. We already spoke about it because event-driven functionality of late is becoming very common today. So suppose I want to do a particular thing, and maybe you can take in a company like my sensor, where I get some data from the sensors, and whenever there's an anomaly, I need to do something. So that's again, I capture all the events of a particular machine, how it works, and there is an anomaly, then I need to do something. In that kind of case, my Azure functions work. Or just I need to give an API. Even in a microservices also, you can, a small service you can implement using Azure functions, and they can communicate through the API gateway. So like that, there are multiple versatile users of Azure functions. And there are per month there are good amount of, at least I think one, if I remember right, it is 1 lakh or plus transactions that are free from the Azure functions. So when you're developing some application, you can think of using this for experimentation purpose. Cosmos DB, anyhow, it's like an NoSQL is one of the interface from the Cosmos DB. So multimodal database service, if you're interested, you can try using Cosmos DB. If not under Azure, there is an Azure SQL Service database also that is very prominent. SQL Service on-prem is quite famous, and that the same thing they've moved into the cloud as well. It's called Azure SQL. So that is also, apart from the PaaS service, there is a managed also. You can take an VM and in that install all these services and all. That's also quite feasible. Okay, scalable by using microservice architecture. The first and fundamental thing is segregate your application into multiple tiers. Then, if required, the second level is go into segregating your functionality into sub levels. But that is if you're developing a very huge application, it makes sense to go to a microservices architecture. But if it's a small one, you can do it together because all and again it might introduce a latency. Then design for redundancy. Imagine that there could be certain amount of failures that is feasible, or it could be that they could be scaled, or in a particular season my web application will be used to a maximum. So think all these aspects before you develop your application. How do you do it? And monitoring is going to really form a core usage of it. Monitoring the performance and usage allows developers to identify and you can accordingly scale it, and this you can scale down or scale up also. So that's the important part of it. So this we already spoke: cost efficiency and scalability, security and compliance. See, Azure as such offers a lot of security features like encryption, firewalls, identity and access management. Has good amount of certifications like GDPR, HIPAA, and ISO 27001. So every country across the world will have certain amount of guidelines that you need to follow. So most of that Azure is compliant towards them, but you have to really look if a particular country you're going to implement it, whether it is meeting the requirement or not. But more or less, generically, everything it is being compliant with. Okay. And from this, integration is going to form a very core aspect. So how do you integrate, such as APIs, connectors, or hybrid? For doing an integration also, there are good amount of technologies within Azure AI. Here I did not list it, but Azure Log Apps is one such important thing. Azure API management, and using function apps also, more or less you can create an integration environment. The integration aspects also can be very well taken care with the PaaS services itself. You can. Okay, so let's now move on to Azure AI. This is also one of the hot topics of late that's being discussed. But before that, let me again come back and see if there are any more questions. So Azure AI. Within Azure also, there are good amount of AI services. We have to talk about three fundamental things, and let's talk about the large language models also, which are being very commonly used or discussed as of today. The first one is the cognitive services or Azure AI services. This one now it's called as Azure AI services, but previously it is called as Azure Cognitive Services. So what it offers, it's a pre-built APIs and SDKs or pre-built models that are there, either for your natural language processing, speech recognition, then computer vision, OCR. For these, there are certain amount of AI services that are available. They're built-in applications. The models are available. You can do certain amount of customization as well on these. The second one is the ML environment, the cloud-based environment. That is a way you can build your own model and you can use it for prediction and automation of decision making, so on and so forth. The third part is the bot services, which is for building and deploying intelligent chatbots and virtual agents. So these chatbot within the Azure ecosystem, you have multiple ways. One is the Azure bot framework. Number two, within your Power Virtual Agent, which is now called as Copilot Studio. Power Virtual Agent or the Copilot Studio, this comes from the low-code, no-code platform of Microsoft. This is called the Power Platform. This is a very good platform where business users or quickly, if you want to develop some apps, you can do. In that, there is something called Copilot Studio. Using that also, you can build. Number three, there's a bot framework Composer. What it does is it does a small interface that Microsoft has given where you can build your bots. This internally uses again Louis Q&A maker, so on and so forth also. So these are the possible ways in which, apart from the other generic frameworks and all that are available, right? This is within the Azure that's available. So let's quickly see something on the Azure AI services. So under the Azure AI services, vision, computer vision, face API, then computer vision, you can do classification as well using the computer vision. Then the face API, form recognizer or the document intelligence. If you see, this is the last one, this part. This is one of the important service that I've seen a lot of customers do use it. This is understanding your OCR text, be it through your layout models or through a simple OCR or through your custom models. I want a particular attribute on the text document, something like maybe if you take an example, your college admission forms I want to process. I don't want to manually enter the data from there and put it into this, whatever handwritten or printed. So I can use these kind of OCR models to read this and persist into some systems, or I can send it to the downstream system. Speech part, speech to text and text to speech translation, speaker recognition, diarizations. These are also, you have ready-made models under this. You can do certain amount of customization for all these models as well. Then the language, text analytics, translator, language, Lewis and Q&A maker, but of late these are being now a bit of outdated. That's what I would say. But but there are a good amount of applications that are still using this Lewis and Q&A maker. Decision maker and personalizer, anomaly detector, and content moderator. These are under the decision making. So these are the Azure AI services that are available. But let's now see quickly, important thing is the Azure OpenAI service that has come. So this is today, whatever chat GPT that you're using in the internet, that is being powered by the GPT model. These GPT models or the large language models, these kind of models are available under Azure also. These are called as Azure OpenAI services. So they have powerful language model, including GPT-3 to 3.5 to 4, and currently the Omni. These are the models that are available. They allow you or help you in natural language processing and detecting, of course, intent detection. With this large language models, you have a lot of use cases or case studies that are possibilities with this OpenAI service. This also comes under the Azure AI service. Then comes the Azure AI Search. This is search as a service solution that leverages AI capabilities to search, including text search or filtering. I want to do a faceting of the data, or I can include some other cognitive skills like the documents, some documents I want to read through them. At an enterprise level, when I want to have a cognitive kind of search, I can bring this. This AI search is also now of late integrated with the hybrid or the vector search capabilities to increase the accuracy. So AI search is from the Azure itself, you have the search capability. Then comes the ML. If you want to build your own models, though no, I don't want to use the ready-made or the applied AI skills of Microsoft. Let me build my model. So I need an infra or I need an ecosystem to build that. You can use the Azure ML thing for that. Then similarly, you have bot service, which we spoke in the previous slides. Like I can build the conversational AI. So high level, if you see, there is a document intelligence. Then there's a conversational intelligence. Conversational is to and fro, something like a bot service. That's a conversational interface. Then the language intelligence, which is going to come from the generative AI, the Azure OpenAI service. So what is generative AI? I believe a lot of you people might be using ChatGPT kind of technologies left and right. So let me quickly touch on it. It is the generative AI is what is AI that we bring in, that we call the technology that is underlying, that is used to generate artifacts that previously relied mostly on the humans. So the artifacts can include, it can be generating an image or generating your text or audio, video, or code, can augment your existing workflows, or you can bring in a new. And it has a groundbreaking impact in a lot of this ecosystem, be it your finance area, or media, or communication, or so on and so forth. So then why we talk about OpenAI when we are in Azure? That's a very common question that comes in. See, as such, OpenAI has a profit and not profit part of it also. So Microsoft has heavily invested in the OpenAI, and they have a very good tie-up. They have certain GPT-3 and 4 language models are exclusively licensed to Microsoft. That's the reason we talk about the OpenAI services in the Microsoft ecosystem as well. So generative AI, you have GPTs, and under GPTs, you have GPT-3, 3.5, 4, 4.0, Omni, so on and so forth. And how Microsoft offers, again, through APIs and SDKs, through Azure OpenAI services, and all this comes under the AI services. So the aspect that you need to remember is most of the services of Microsoft, they're given as an AI service, which AI service or a service, which can be given as an SDK or through an API, through your REST. You can access it via a REST service or through an SDK. So you can use that and access and build your application, be it your AI services or non-AI services as well. So that's how they work on. So we spoke about cloud, AI services, and benefits of cloud thing. And then the Microsoft Learn also we spoke about. So there's one more important thing. Let me bring this poster. Huh. This is the cloud ecosystem, Microsoft Azure, Windows Server, System Server. But let's talk about the Microsoft Server part of it. This is from the See, the service, cloud computing services can be divided into three They are differed as SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS that we already spoke about. See, all these virtualization, servers, storage, network, only if we talk about it, it is the IaaS part of it. Then we want some runtime, framework, middleware, operating systems. All this is the PaaS part of it, including your application and data. That is the SaaS. So how do you use your application? That depends on you and who is managing what. The white color managed by the customer, and see this yellow color part could be in IaaS. Mostly the management is through the vendor or the cloud provider. And here, if you see SaaS here, mostly it is managed by the vendor. Sorry, with the cloud provider, and the user is only using the application. So that's how it falls. Next comes the next part of is how do you handle this? See, we spoke about compute. Under the compute, I have virtual machines, enable you to have full control over the server, or a website or the web applications allow you to get started with web apps for free. You can scale as you go and build using a range of tools. Or you can have mobile services, cloud services. Similarly, on the app service, you have Active Directory and your multi-factor authentication. This is on the security part of it. Notifications, in case if you want some notifications, because if today if you see in your mobile you keep getting notification, right? The app is updated, or there's something that is available. Previously you requested for a particular product which was not available today, when it's all that you handle through your notification hub. Then a service bus channel or VS Visual Studio Online. How do you, this is again a SaaS service. Media BizTalk service, these are middleware service. Then the CDN cloud, you want to render certain amount, your web application, this will heavily dependent on the content delivery networks if you want. So those kind of things. Then of course, the important part is the API. How do you publish your APIs to a lot of your front end application? You might be having a web application, you could be having a mobile application, but for all of them, I have a common backend. So how do you offer them? I offer as an API management, publish this API, so where the end users can consume. And this is the storage part of it. Storage, SQL databases. Either it could be a simple storage, or you can have blob, table storage, containers, so on and so forth. Or you can have a managed SQL HT Insight or Cosmos DB, which we spoke. Recovery manager, backup, like how do you do a recovery and backup part of it, and so on and so forth. And then comes the network. The virtual network is a common thing. The traffic manager, how do you route to your traffic to multiple things. So these are your data services, compute, and this is how your cloud is organized. So this might not be much relevant on the cloud. This is on premise if you want to set up your private cloud and all. I'm not going to talk much about this, but this poster helps you a lot. Please refer to Microsoft Learn document. Microsoft.learn. This is learn.microsoft.com. This has good amount of documentation that is available. In that, in case if you want to further pursue, there is a Microsoft Azure Fundamentals course, or the AZ900 is a certification, or you can just go through the course to understand how it is. So please go through the course to understand the Microsoft Azure thing. You need not take the certification, but at least it will help you in understanding the entire Azure ecosystem. Okay, let me put through this one also here. Similarly, if you are interested in the AI services, AI 900 is the course to start with. That's a good place where you can. Okay, so with this, I'll stop. And if there are any questions, you can ping me here, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Lakshya, you're there?
Yes, ma'am. I
Are there any
request all the
questions?
participants if they have any kind of questions, they can write in the chat box. Not the I request everyone to kindly ask questions related to the session only. Other questions related to exchange of team members and deadline extension. We'll take a different session for that. Ma'am, one question is there in the chat box.
The question is, for a large scale application where there are a lot of users, which service would you recommend? The large scale application depends on whether it is a web application. So Azure App Service actually suits, and if that you have premium tier, you can take that. Apart from that, there are isolated tiers also. If you feel no, it's going to be beyond that, so you can go ahead with an isolated tier as well. I'm assuming it's an web application. That's what you're planning to do. In case if it is no, it's not a web application, there's no front end interface, but I have good amount of data processing, heavy data processing kind of things and all, then you might need to look into APIs, like an Azure API management or Azure functions. And within the Azure functions, for a application which runs for long term or a long duration, you might be needing to use durable functions, so on and so forth, or some event processing kind of thing. But to make it very simple, I'm assuming it is a web application. You can think of a premium tier. It can suit a lot of the needs. Azure Key Vault, see, in case generally every application will have certain amount of configuration. Something like, suppose I have a key. I need to access one particular blob, and that blob has a key. So it is ideally you should not hard code your keys in the code. That's how we do it, right? To externalize it, externalize, and you put it in your web.config, that is in your web.config, or your app settings that are available with your PaaS services. That's one approach, I think. But beyond that, you can put your key vault and use the key, whatever key that is there, that same that in your application, that is your key vault. That is mainly to externalize your keys, and that's used, that's a Azure key vault service.
In case anyone has any more doubts, they can still ask. If not, then we'll uh, just complete the session.
Can we use Azure Cloud as a free of cost? Magneto, it is feasible. Let me tell you certain aspects of it. I think Microsoft, and you register as an open user, from 1 month they give free $140 or something like that. That's one. But within that also, once you log in into your Azure Cloud, every service has, most of the services have free tier. As I told, Azure App Service has a free tier. Azure Function Apps has 1 lakh or 1 million some transactions per month free. Or if you take any of your AI services, there'll be free tiers available. Most of this, but some of even Azure AI Search has 3 free things that are available. For experimentation purpose, you can see that. What you can do is register it for a free time for a 1 month or something. Then afterwards, within that, whatever service that you need, see if there is a free tier that is available. You pick up that kind of services. So that way you'll be able to manage your costs. The moment you pick up an higher tier, all your credits will exhaust very quickly. So be cautious about it. But beyond that, you'll not get whatever is the limit. Only that much you'll be able to. If it is a 1 month, then it's 1 month only. That's it. So accordingly, you have to plan it and see how you can do it.
We'll just wait for 2 more minutes in case anyone has any doubts. If not, then we'll then complete the session.
Let me again share my screen for a minute. I was just seeing this. See, you'll have some, if you go to the Azure, start free option is also there. Some of the services are free for 12 months itself. Maybe you can see which services are free. Accordingly, you can use. For 12 months these services, but only these types. Now today I'm going to say take some GPU, some nice 64 GB GPU and all. Obviously it will charge, it won't be free. So you see which services are available free for you. So SQL database, this is 1 lakh week or seconds is free. Blob 5 GB is free. Cosmos DB 1,000 request units, and app service 10 web mobile, and these are free. And Azure functions 1 million requests is free. And even grid, this is again 1 lakh operations per month. So when you try to register, here you will be able to figure out which services are free and how much. Start with USD 200 Azure credit is free. I think this is for 30 days. 200 Azure the US dollars for 30 days. And within that also, you try to pick up a service which is of free tier, so that you will be able to experiment more and more. The moment you pick up an expensive tier, it will eat away all your 200 credits within 5 days or so. So you can accordingly see this, go through this documentation and take it. So that's how you can do. And there's something called Azure calculator, pricing calculator. So here you will be able to know which all services are available and which one is free or how much is available. All this information you'll get it over here. This is called as a pricing calculator scenario. So learn.microsoft, then pricing calculator, then the free service, followed by Microsoft Architecture Center. There's a very good amount of reference architectures that are available, and there are implementation that are available within the GitHub as well for those reference architectures. So you can refer to the GitHub to see this. Can we use Firebase? Is any, I'm sorry, in Azure Functions is serverless? Yes, Azure Functions is serverless. It's a serverless, under serverless architecture only it comes in. Can we use Firebase? Is any security concern? Firebase, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is an Azure service or in third-party service. You need to check once in the portal if it is available. Piyush, this for your question. Huh. It's an interesting question. I suppose serverless functions only start when the endpoints are hit. But what if it takes quite a time to start the function? Is there a way? Yeah, there is a way. See, generally, I told you, right, that 1 million, it's free. So every time when you hit this, sometimes you could see or hear, see that latency. It goes into a dormant state and when it comes. So, but if you have a tier, in the sense, if you pick up an app service plan model instead of per hit model, then and you make that as an active app service plan, that way it won't go into, you will not get this latency issues. You can circumvent that particular issue. But again, you have to take an conscious decision. What is more important for you when you're implementing? Is it the cost part of it or is it the latency part of it? Accordingly, you can take a decision. Firebase, I believe it's a Google part of it. I'm not much sure on it because I mostly focus on Azure. But you can look into the data, this thing, documentation. They will give more information about it. Good evening. My question is whether the training that I'm undergoing is going there in certificate issued for this training as well. And will this session extend further? Maybe Lakshya, this question is for you.
No, it's just kind of an online mentoring session for you to be prepared for the grand finale. We will not issue any kind of certificate for these trainings, and we'll keep taking a few more sessions before the grand finale. And we'll also ask the. We are also in the talking with the ministries from which you submitted problem statement in case they want to take a specialized mentoring session with you. That what they expect to you, the final product in the grand finale. In case if anyone has no more doubts, so ma'am, can we wrap up the session here?
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time. Hope it will be helpful. Please refer to Microsoft Architecture Center and Microsoft Learning thing. A good amount of documentation with the reference implementations that are available. So when you register, ensure that you try to pick up the free tires for your experimentation purpose. The good amount of credits that are available. Try, experiment, and see them. Okay. Thanks and have a happy learning. Thanks, Lakshmi. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. Mm, once again, thank you,
Thanks, Sam.
everyone, and good luck for everyone for the grand finale.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm dropping off.